part about all the elements that you're talking about, but the way the noises sound on that chorus, it's like kind of a lava lamp vibe, just very kind of an effortlessness to it. And it all just kind of works together. But I'd forgotten about how it wasn't even a continuous bass line in that. So they had the 808, but then they also had the bass line, but it was just little riffs in it. Not even a full line.
Right.
Almost. So it's like everybody's just kind of putting a foot forward and showing you their shoe in the band a little bit. And like, you can't really fully appreciate how good all the musicians are that played on this record, or contextually how different it was that they got real band members.
But the credits list is crazy.
It's long. And that was very much against the grain at that time, and honestly still kind of now. But it pays off. Like when they did all those shows a few years ago and everything sounded exactly like it did on the record, but very live and warm. It was because all the people, or a lot of the people that played on the record, played in this live band and just are so good, have such good chops. You know, it's just like the people that play in church and just kind of like jam wherever. And yeah, that's just that's very strange for a rap group, I think, even still to this day.
Read any of those interviews that Dre gave after this record came out. I mean, he was literally saying, we're the greatest hip hop group of all time now. So for him to be on this album and reacting in this almost like vulnerable way, being really serious, questioning the materialism that's so just deeply a part of the scene that this is coming out of, and to have him be playing that role on the album and then to come back out of it and wear the type of stuff he was wearing to award shows, being the weird three stacks that we can appreciate now, but having him be directly in the middle of the spotlight at the time and still be responding with, yeah, we're self-aware, but we're also still better than you. And we know it. So we're just going to keep kind of doing it.
It's so great. I think they had to know that they were on to something really transcendent, but you can't know how transcendent it is until you see it transcend and you see how people respond to it beyond the hip hop community. And I think, they had bigger pop hits after that with The Way You Move and Hey Ya and all that stuff, and songs that are like getting played at arenas on a regular basis. But that record is still the one that, that's like late Beatles level, right? That they were that deliberately, aggressively weird in themselves, and they were so embraced in a mainstream way. That's the kind of thing where, Dre had to know, like, they put it out and then they knew how good the songs were and they knew how authentic it was. And they had to be like, yeah, maybe we are the greatest of all time.
For all intents and purposes, they were right. Every greatest 100 albums to come out of, especially that decade. But then it was Times, I think. Stankonia is one of the 100 greatest albums of all time, ever, according to Time magazine. Not The Concept.
I don't know if you've heard of it.
Time, The Concept, is not doing award shows yet. We'll see. Right. Dre seemed like he was responding to things so often on this record.
Yeah.
And that's beside the point that we haven't even gotten to the fact that Erykah Badu is on, I don't even know. Is that how you say her name?
Erykah Badu?
Erykah Badu.
Gets weirder every time you say it.
Is on this record. And you've kind of got this, you got Miss Jackson on the same record.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. And they're like,
and then she's on the record.
They're like not a thing at this point, right? They have a son together, but they're not together.
Right. So they have a child, and then he's pretty impassionately singing about making apologies to his baby mama's mama. And then she's on a song that's kind of politically charged. There's just a lot going on. And on top of that, this was kind of the one where Dre decided he didn't want to rap as much anyway, and starts kind of coming up with things. So it was interesting. There are so many places that kind of feel like we're just getting the three stacks response to something that's happened either in the album or outside of the album or in recent history or something, where he's just kind of reacting to different things and throwing them up and seeing what happens.
I think that just kind of became his MO. I think the best summation of Dre, especially as he's gotten older, is the beginning of The Whole World, where he just goes,
okay, here we go.
I don't know. I don't know if it's because he's so good and people knew he was so good and it just kind of like lost its luster really quickly. But this is definitely the precursor to the Love Below for Dre, and that he's very bored with rap and he's like, I have to do something different because I don't just want to be known as a rap. Like, I'm a very creative person. I'm a true capital A artist, and something different has to happen here because I've been on tour rapping raps and this is not for me.
And apparently since they had gotten Stankonia Studios, right? So again, they weren't paying for that recording time, which came a lot. And I think that's a relevant thing to bring up for albums like this, right? The albums that feel thick and really thought out. Having an artist be able to transition from having to execute everything in a small amount of time based on money to I'm going to be done with this record when I'm done does change the way that you can approach the songs that you want to make. So there were a lot of stories about Dre spending a lot of time at home instead, writing songs on his acoustic, and that's a lot of where Miss Jackson's hooks came out of. But then one other kind of interesting fact that I found, again, feels like it kind of contributes to that narrative of Dre kind of turning things around and responding to them. Apparently, he was getting ready to paint a house that he was in anyway, so he just started writing lyrics on the wall of where he was. So just writing on the wall in the room of wherever he was coming up with his ideas, which apparently one of them became the lyrics to Gasoline Dreams. That kind of visual almost feels like it captures the way I started looking at him at that point, just like a punk. Like you almost said, well, you did say earlier, this is a punk record
for sure.
And that aesthetic feels like it comes through in all these different ways that we move the vibe from chill to regretful to harsh and strong. Like Snappin' and Trappin' is on the same record as Miss Jackson.
They are literally next to each other. Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of anti on this record. I think that's kind of the spirit that carries. It's like, this record is defined by what it doesn't want to be, which is I dropped this mic, but it's expensive.
Yeah,
don't do that.
Right. Interludes get a lot of garbage from everybody on every hip hop album.
Sure.
And they're so good on this one.
They were really good for like a minute.
They don't drag out.
Right.
They're not comedy skits.
Right. And it's not just two people talking necessarily. And it always ties to the song it precedes or that succeeds it. I don't know. It's so weird. They're characters. It's just they're real people that you could like. That's a conversation that's probably happening in Texaco right around the corner from where we're recording right now. Okay. I want to keep talking about the interludes because they're actually really great on this. Like the one where it's romantic and then he asks the girl for the prenup. It's really great. Still don't know why they spell it pre-nump. But then my favorite one, and it was my wife's ringtone for a long time, almost obnoxiously, was Cruising in the ATL, which I thought was just like a thing they made. But recently, thanks to the magic of YouTube, I found out that it's like from this whole CD of songs that this guy made. And there's a full 4-minute version of the song. Yeah, so this is Cruising in the ATL by Southside Soul.
We see a lot of fine girls, and when we're cruising in the ATL, we be cruising on a Friday afternoon. Yeah.
That's crazy. How did they find that?
That was amazing.
And it goes on for so much longer.
That's good to hear. I was about to ask, can it go on for a long time?
For the length of a cruise down Peachtree.
One of the songs I never feel like anyone talked to me about off of this album that's really weird is Toilet Tisha.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you've got Dre kind of reacting and changing. And I mean, he's not even on a couple of songs, right?
Yeah, he's not on Snappin' and Trappin'. He's not on the like straight fastball down the middle type songs.
Right. So he's not even there. So he's kind of, it feels like he's weaving in and out of Big Boy, who's always, I mean, he's not just tagging along. I mean, he's the backbone of everything that they're doing.
For sure.
So to see Dre feels like he's kind of rotating and weaving in and out of him. And then Toilet Tisha feels like they found some way to be dark together and just do this strange thing that's so...
It's so heavy, man. That song's so heavy.
It's concerned. It's self-aware. It's a good narrative and good story and all that stuff you want to do when you make an impactful song. But I love it because they push so much harder into, yeah, we wrote this song about this. Yeah, you're 3/4 of the way through the song, and now we're going to do a dramatic,
in case you didn't
telling
get it from
of what
we were
this might be
saying,
like.
We're going to literally act it out.
For the mother of a 14-year-old who might have taken her life on the toilet.
Yeah, it's deep. It's unflinching for sure. It would have changed the whole tone of the record, I think, if they'd put it any further up than it is. But I think it's like second to last. And you're already really far out because they'd done like Red Velvet. They'd done Slum Beautiful. And then I think it's Toilet Tisha and then Stank Love to close. So it's almost like you're almost like astral traveling at this point, and you're kind of up and away. And they're like, hey, don't forget, this kind of stuff is still happening. I remember on Aquemini, on I think the Art of Storytelling, you know, Dre's telling that story about him and that girl, and it's like 3 a.m, yawning, dancing under streetlights, and he says something like, what you want to be when you grow up, and she said alive. And I remember, like, you get kind of caught up in the feel of that song, and then that line kind of hits you. Yeah. It kind of stings you like an icicle a little bit. And Toilet Tisha is just like 5 minutes of that feeling. Like you're in it. It's like you're in that apartment and it's so visual, man. That song's crazy.
Circling back, that's why I think it can be so long, because they keep throwing you curveballs the whole way. It just gets weird. They don't really apologize for it. They don't really bring it back. There's not even really like a central theme or a central hook to this whole thing. It's almost like it has a singular feel and journey because it stays kind of equal distances away from the center every time. Yeah. You go further into these different directions and keep throwing weird curveballs and being really heavy, or, you know, reaching almost into dance music on Question Mark, or however we're going to pronounce that song.
That song's super heavy too, like deep existentialism, which was crazy for me as a 13-year-old that Dre is just posing these questions without answers. Right. And that was a song that, you're right, it had just about no structure. He just kind of did, it was almost like very aggressive slam poetry, and then just walked off the stage and then just let the beat keep playing. There was such an aggression to the way that song was set up, that you're right, it kind of primes you for, it's like, all right, now we're going to talk about some of the heavier stuff, which they do on Red Velvet, which is like sort of an indictment of everything that's happening in rap at that time, like all the materialism and the excess and all that stuff. And then Gangsta Shit is like, I think it's a sort of straight up like brag verse from pretty much everybody on that song. And it's a posse cut because there's like 800 people in that song, right? And everybody's all the way live. And then Dre comes in, and it's like, well, hold on. All of this is stupid. You're right. Very much a reaction to like not only the idea of being gangsta, but like everybody else acting hard on that song. So it's very interesting. Like you see Dre, the existentialist, on this record, especially on the back half. And the only time where he seems to feel truly comfortable is on Slum Beautiful, when he gets to like kind of sing and be ethereal and think about love. And that song's pretty different in subject matter than the rest of the songs on the back half.
You the sweetest thing on my head, and I'd like to say that I love to make love to every molecule of you. And if you want to spontaneously combust, that's what we'll do in unison.
Even the reactions to it at the time that I thought were interesting. There was one quote, and I forget who said it in response to Stankonia being asked about it, but they said Outkast is more Prince and the Revolution than they are Dr. Dre and NWA. And it's still really interesting, I guess, to think about Stankonia as a moment in time, and not just a work of art, which it is, which we appreciate. And at this point, being from Atlanta is somewhere deep inside of us already. But thinking about it as that real turning point, which I think people who are, however we might describe this without sounding condescending, because it's definitely not judgmental, but just not having been from the South and trying to label it as something like pre-crunk or pre-trap or something like that, and thinking about it in terms of what it enabled later that became popular in other places. But like Southern hip hop wasn't outside of the South very